So let us start. I hope that Minister Strilets, Minister of Environment, can hear us, because he will be the one introducing this part of the presentations. And as I said before, it was Minister Galushenko who started, and now we have Minister Ruslan Strilets. I will ask you to warmly welcome Minister on the screen. Thank you, Minister, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. First of all, dear colleagues, I'd like to welcome all of you in the second Ukrainian Pavilion, which is a place of unity for friends of Ukraine. I believe that all activities and all discussion will be useful for future decision on all levels. First of all, for peace, for green future, and for actions for climate neutrality. Modern Ukraine needs solutions that will help us make a green transition at an accelerated pace. The green transition is the basis of our post-war recovery. Build back green is the principle we put into every decision. It is about decarbonization of the economy. It is about a full-fledged climate policy. It is about strengthening energy independence. It is about a sustainable, low-carbon energy system in Ukraine. We are developing climate legislation that will create a framework for climate governance. There are four key components of this system. First, strategic documents. This includes the creation of the National Energy and Climate Plan, updating the second NDC, integration of the climate aspect into the National Recovery Plan of Ukraine through the Ukrainian Fund. The second NDC should be more ambitious and include measures for economic growth without escalating emissions. Second, carbon pricing. It provides for the functioning of the MRV and emission trading systems, revision of the carbon tax, revision of emission standards for transportation, implementation of sustainable development in public procurement. Third, stimulating decarbonization, support for green technologies. For example, equipment for solar and wind power plants, heat pumps, etc. Simplification of permitting and administrative procedures for these sectors. Promoting electromobility, energy efficiency, and sustainable development in the agricultural sector. Fourth, climate governance, creating a climate change management system at the state level. This is about the distribution of responsibilities between government agencies and government coordination. Monitoring of progress in achieving climate regulation goals, implementing of NDCs, and achievement of green goals. These are the approaches ensured in our climate law. Together with the Ministry of Economy, we are preparing the basis for the draft National Energy and Climate Plan for 2025-2030. This is important for us that this draft takes into account the goals of the NDC and changes in the amount of the emission tax from the level of 82 cents per ton with future growth to the European level per ton by 2050. A key element of achieving climate goals is the creation of a Ukrainian emission trading system that will fully comply with the European system and fully integrate it with the EU system. And today, various sectors of the economy are actively discussing the issues of implementing the CBAM, which will no longer be the challenge for us after the launch of the ETS. Our goal is to push the boundaries of the CBAM and be inside this process. The green post-war recovery of Ukraine, decarbonization of all sectors of the economy, building a low-carbon energy system, and achieving net zero should be based on climate policy. Climate policy is an integral part of all policies and sectoral recovery plans. The climate architecture we are building is gradually leading Ukraine towards the European Green Deal and low carbon development. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful and resultative discussion today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for your words. Thank you for sharing with us your ambition. Thank you for also mentioning National Energy and Climate Plan as the key vehicle in order to put this ambition into practice. And so right now we are going to focus on National Energy and Climate Plan. And so we are going to see a short description, a short animation on NECP, and then Minister Soboliev will take the floor on you, after you. Thank you very much, Minister, again. Thank you.
Ukraine will soon join.
Thank you very much. We are privileged here because that's the first moment when we are going to discuss National Energy and Climate Plan in public. And Minister Soboliev, who is taking the floor right now, is the man behind National Energy and Climate Plan. Despite the war, himself and the team, also Olena and all others, are working relentlessly. And I can assure you that during the holiday seasons, they were working 24 hours in order to be where we are right now, to have clear plans that bring Ukraine to the future. Oleksiy, the floor is yours.
Should work, yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you, Michal. We have a high-level advisory group, which is co-chaired by Michal and First Deputy Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko, Minister of Economy. So from our side, from the government side, that the Ministry of Economy coordinates the process of development NECP for Ukraine. And right now we'll have a brief cut of where we stand right now. So we just started the public negotiations on that, and we encourage everyone to join to produce the best NECP possible and very realistic. So the next slide, if yeah. So first of all, we need to align national energy and climate plan with the EU energy and community regulations. And then we also incorporated the targets from 2050 energy strategy. Then we should be producing national energy and climate plan by June next year, but we're moving ahead of schedule. Why? Because this NECP should align already with Ukraine plan, and Ukraine plan should be ready by the end of this year. So basically that's how we're slightly moving ahead of schedule, and we're also everything's moving in parallel, and that's how we encourage everyone to be as proactive as possible. And then we also need to align NECP with nationally determined contribution for long-term goals and climate neutrality. But there is also another aspect to NECP is, of course, the war. So one of the kind of aspects of transitions in NECP would be how do we incorporate the war effects into that? Because we will, to balance the energy system, we will have to rebuild not just the green part of it, but the not so green part of it, to have the system balance. And we need to discuss this as well. The next slide, please. So we are modeling right now 3 scenarios. The first one is with existing policies and measures called WEM. The other one is with planned policies and measures that also incorporated in different documents such as Ukraine plan, energy strategy, etc. And then there's a third scenario that you've seen, for example, in the short movie that or it was discussed during the first panel as Ukraine as a reliable partner for exporting both the green energy and green energy products. So it's WEM+. The modeling is aligned with long-term net zero scenarios, and these are scenarios, assumptions that you see. So the next slide, how the NECP actually looks like. So what is this report about? So the first part is just the overview of the process of establishing the plan, and then there are like 4 dimensions that are in every chapter: decarbonization, energy efficiency, energy security, internal market, and research, and then development and competitiveness. And then there are objectives from different documents that we already committed to or will be committing to. Then there are policies for that. Then the current state of situation and the impact assessment and what needs to be done to get where we want to be. Next slide. So the main targets that you should be aware of, first of all, is 30% reduction of methane emissions in 2030, then coal phase out by 2035, and then full decarbonization of buildings by 2050. Then we definitely need to increase the share of renewables to 27%. And we're setting ambitious energy efficiency targets. So the next slide shows the key discussions that we have right now while developing NECP, and we also welcome everyone and your participation in helping to shape the discussions and to have as realistic plan as possible. So first of all is timing and approach to carbon pricing in Ukraine. Then how to achieve these targets that we set. What is the path forward? Then the export question. Remember the third scenario, right? So it is more longer term. There's a lot of unknowns there, but still we need to prepare for that and start working right now. So that's how we need a really, really good realistic scenario. And the last part is integration into EU and the global research and development. So the next slide shows the modeling that we have so far for this slide shows 2 scenarios. One is the basic, the other one is with additional policy measures and reforms. So as you can see, this shows the amount of investments that you need to fulfill these goals that we just mentioned. So the 2 big sectors, as you can see on the slides, the red one is transport. So that's where the decarbonization and the investment should go first. The second one is heating sector. So out of like then there are buildings, etc. But in both scenarios, power transport and power and heat sectors present the most investment opportunities for Ukraine's green transition. The next slide. So we try to shape the Ukraine green transition as a business case, because as you've seen, since the volume of investment is high, then there is also like export opportunities to EU, and there's general EU integration and critical materials integration. So that's why we think that this is a new chance to rebuild Ukrainian economy in a green, sustainable way. And this plan can help better identify financial and technological needs, and then we can solve these needs further, and then work together both for us and for EU. Thanks. Yeah, the next slide. So basically, as was just mentioned during the previous panel, so here are some concrete projects that will branch out from this National Energy and Climate Plan and Ukraine plan as well. One is hydro power plants, so Kaniv and Dniester, which will make renewables, like increase renewables in Ukraine. Then renewable energy sources, the wind and solar, there are already like private and public projects in that. And the next slide. And these ones are the export part, for example, right? So we're developing the projects for green steel and for critical materials. What we ask is to join us. We just started this public consultations, and we will share the first draft late December or in January of this National Energy and Climate Plan. And we would also welcome your opinion on that to produce as realistic plan as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexei. Thank you. Congratulations. And let me right now, with this excellent introduction, to enter into our second high-level panel. And I'm honored that in this panel we have such distinguished guests, starting with Jeffrey Pyatt, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Energy Resources and G7+. So it's extremely good moment that we will start with this dimension in a moment. We have Tim Stern with us, who is Director of International Energy Diplomacy in Climate and Environment Directorate of Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Tim, welcome. And you, together with Jeff, you are working a lot in this high-level advisory group and moving forward all the discussions on NECP. And I'm very thankful that you joined us for this very important discussion. We have Harry Boyd Carpenter, EBRD Managing Director, Climate Strategy and Delivery. Welcome. And Lionel Rapay, Director, Enlargement and EU Neighborhood, EIB Global Directorate. We will have in a moment Artur Lorkowski, Director of Energy Community Secretariat, joining us as well. So let me start, and Ambassador, if you would be so kind to start with your assessment of the situation. And obviously it's difficult not to ask you regarding the bipartisan support that will be needed in order to accompany this National Energy and Climate Plan over years. We mentioned several perspectives, and on all of them, we will need international community, and US is playing a critical role in this regard.
Well, thank you. And it's great to be back here at the Ukraine Pavilion. I would start by emphasizing the importance of what we just heard from Alexei, what we heard from Deputy Minister Grinchuk yesterday, and from Minister Halushenko over the past couple of days, which is the quite profound Ukrainian resolve to build a future energy system that is fully consistent with Ukraine's membership in the European Union. And I think it was also very powerful for me yesterday to hear how clear Commissioner Simpson was in terms of her understanding of something that President von der Leyen and others have said on many occasions, which is that Ukraine will be a member of the European Union, and that we collectively, the EU, the United States, our partners in the G7, are committed to doing everything that we can to make that the case. I think in my case, in particular, at a personal level, having watched this process begin 10 years ago during the Euromaidan, and to see how far Ukraine has come, even in the face of this extraordinary full-scale invasion, and all of the effort that Vladimir Putin has made to see that Ukraine fails. And that commitment is profoundly important. You asked about United States support. I think the first thing I would emphasize is, first of all, President Biden, the Biden administration are absolutely committed to our Ukraine policy. But beyond that, I think the American people are. And I've spent a lot of time since my return to Washington talking to the members of Congress, explaining what our policy is. And I think the vast majority of our Congress understand the fundamental threat that Putin's invasion represents to the values that we hold in common. I think in terms of how do we hold on to that and what does Ukraine need to do? I think there are two things I would highlight, and both of them were reflected in all of the comments we've heard from Ukrainian ministers over the past 2 days. One is the importance of Ukraine's demonstration of its commitment to reform. That's why we had this MOU that was signed between the United States and Ukraine when President Zelensky last went to Washington, signed by my boss, Secretary Blinken, Foreign Minister Kuleba, laying down some of the specific benchmarks that Ukraine has established for itself in terms of corporate governance reform, implementation of important legislation like REMIT, the introduction of full market pricing into the energy sector, removing all of the distortions which were in the past an invitation to corruption and manipulation of the Ukrainian energy system. And what I find so encouraging is usually when the United States, or when I'm having these conversations with Ukrainian counterparts, they're the ones who are pushing for ambition. And I think that tells you a lot about how Ukraine has changed and the new political environment that we're operating in. And then the other aspect, and I was really glad to hear Alexei's focus on export industries, because the West collectively, the European Union through its financial support, the United States through our fiscal budgetary support, have played a critical role in helping Ukraine have the tools to resist Russia's invasion. But we can't do that forever. And when I talk to members of Congress, the question that I get most insistently, and I was doing this, I was with Tim in London on Wednesday, and I was back in Washington on Thursday talking to Congress about these issues. And the question that I always get is, how does this end? What's the strategy for helping Ukraine to stand on its own feet? And I think it's exactly what the minister just described. It's things like green steel, leveraging the opportunities of the European CBAM. It's developing Ukraine's clear capacity to be an export power for the rest of Europe at a moment when Europe is going to need to fill the hole created by the very welcome decoupling from Russian energy supplies, leveraging Ukraine's capacity in wind, in solar, in biomass, in nuclear, and then also the area of critical minerals and metallurgy, and sort of how we unlock that capacity. I was talking this morning with Scott Nathan, the CEO of our Development Finance Corporation. Scott has a very strong mandate to look for opportunities, to look for shovel-ready projects in Ukraine that will help to unlock that capacity. And I think the sectors that I've just laid out are high on that agenda. I'm working closely with former Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker. When I was ambassador in Kyiv, Secretary Pritzker was my most important supporter in President Obama's cabinet. She visited multiple times. She really knew what we were trying to do. She has now come back into government as the president's special envoy for Ukraine recovery, leveraging her her knowledge of the American private sector, her success as a business person herself, but also her deep commitment to Ukraine. And she's met with President Zelensky. She's traveled to Ukraine, and I think she sees a very high priority on the issues that I'm responsible for. And then the last point I will make on what do we have to do, I think the cooperation with our partners in the G7 is terribly important. It's terrific to have Tim here, to have Artur here, both of whom are leading participants in our G7 Plus platform. The United States, and when I talk to Congress, the point I always make is that on these issues, we are not alone. We are doing this as part of a grand coalition of states and institutions that understand the threat that Vladimir Putin represents and understand that this only ends when Putin's defeated. So that's a sort of quick survey. And what I want to emphasize in response to your specific question is just how strong the enduring American commitment to Ukraine's success is.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for your great words. And you mentioned G7 Plus, and this platform is indeed critical in providing support to Ukraine. How do you see possible future progress of what can be done from this platform, and how we can put also National Energy and Climate Plan at the heart of recovery, because that will be also the backbone of economy and of infrastructure development in Ukraine. So what do you see? Do you see already a role for G7 Plus in this regard?
Yeah, thank you. And I hope you'll ask the same questions to Tim and Artur, because I'm interested in their response. What I will say is, first of all, I had the opportunity last week on Thursday, Friday, I had both Pierre Heilbrunn, who's the French coordinator for G7 Ukraine support, and David Della Sicilia, the Italian member of our group. And what I was most encouraged by was that both David and Pierre, who have a wider responsibility than just energy, they described the energy group as the most effective of these G7 coordination platforms. And I give a lot of credit to my team in the State Department who've worked very hard to make this effective. And it is, as I think Artur and Tim will say, I mean, it's a real partnership, and we're not just trading talking points. We're really trying to figure out how do we help Ukraine? How do we solve the specific problems? Right now, we have two agenda items that we're working on simultaneously. We have to keep the lights on in the face of Putin's weaponization of the winter, the new campaign of drone attacks that we saw starting 2 weeks ago, the expectation that we will see more of that in the weeks ahead. We have to make sure that this winter, just like last winter, Ukraine and Ukraine's incredibly brave energy workers at Ukrenergo, at DTEK, who are out at the Obolenergos, who are out there under fire, keeping the lights on, that they have the tools they need to succeed. But we also want to make sure that everything we do for short-term resilience is consistent to what we saw in this plan. Building a future energy grid that is decentralized, fully aligned with European standards, greener, decoalified as fast as possible. So not rebuilding a Soviet energy system, but building one that is fully aligned with Europe. And in that regard, I think it's European partners that are going to be so important. Yesterday, I was with Romanian Energy Minister Barduja, really gratified by how strong Romania's support is. Poland obviously plays an essential role. All of the near neighbors. And it reminds me of 10 years ago, the last Yalta conference that took place in Yalta. I had the honor to be there, and I will always remember one of the Russian representatives, and I can't remember who it was, but he essentially delivered a threat. And he said, I can't tell you what's going to happen if you continue down this European pathway, but it's going to be very, very bad, and I would think twice about it. And what will always stick with me was the response of, and I can't remember if I think it was probably President Kwasniewski, who stood up and with great passion, he said, "You can do this, Ukraine. We in Europe have done it. We in Eastern Europe have done it. We know what this European pathway looks like. We know how hard it is. We know the sacrifices that are required, but your success is our success." And I think holding on to that mentality, even in the face of all of the hate, all of the destruction that Vladimir Putin has put into trying to frustrate that trajectory is what the G7 plus process is really all about. What I do in the energy group is subsumed underneath the larger G7 plus coordination platform. Mike Pyle at the White House leads that for the United States. And I've been very encouraged. I was talking yesterday with one of my counterparts from Japan. I know that the Italian government is very committed to maintaining the kind of leadership there. And I think I can speak for the US and the UK governments, having just been in London. All of us see this as an incredibly powerful tool in our effort to defeat Vladimir Putin and what he is trying to do to us collectively.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for superposing this G7 plus spirit with Yalta, highly symbolic for Central Europeans in terms of all these speeches taking place in this place, memorable for our history, but memorable for a history we wouldn't like to repeat, in which people do not decide about themselves, but are being decided by autocrats like Putin. So thank you very much for your great words. And you asked for that, so I cannot omit not to move forward to Tim with the same question. So how do you see also, Tim, the main challenges ahead of Ukraine? How do you see the role of energy, and how do you see G7 plus evolving in accompanying Ukraine as well?
Thank you for inviting me to join the panel, especially with such distinguished guests. And I want to start, as Jeff did, by applauding Ukraine and the colleagues here who've shown such resolve to, firstly, stay the course in strengthening their energy sector and fighting off the continued attacks on it, but also to develop the National Energy and Climate Plan so quickly. The Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Economy, Dixie Group, it's been really impressive. And from our perspective, it's been done in a really transparent and inclusive way with international partners. We've been very pleased that we've been able to feed in, looking forward to the public consultation, but really applaud that effort. It's been hugely impressive. So thank you. Our new Foreign Secretary in the UK, David Cameron, has been absolutely clear in his first visit to Ukraine. One of the first things he did in his job was to get out there in the recent G7 foreign ministers meeting, where he said that this is top of his agenda, supporting Ukraine through the war, supporting Ukraine's energy sector is absolutely critical, and he sees it as a top priority, and he's going to stay the course. And he made the point quite effectively that as we work together, our economies, our financial sectors, we have the power, we have the weight to do this really effectively if we join up. So we're really proud to be supporting the National Energy and Climate Plan. We're providing experts to support the final drafting. And I think it's great that there's going to be a consultation with businesses, citizens, and civil society. And we stand ready to support the implementation. So if you need scientific or technical expertise, then we're here to help with that if it's needed. And you made the point about what's the connection to the G7 group. So at the London Ukraine Recovery Conference, we, with many partners here, launched a clean energy plan for Ukraine. And we really see that vehicle and the partners supporting that as supporting the NECP. We were very pleased that we could get that off the ground. There's been an event at COP here in the last few days where we brought in new partners to that group, the IFC, UN Global Compact and ARENA. And then we're talking to Germany about how they take that forward at the next URC so that we can keep that support going, keep that G7 plus support going and aligned to what our Ukrainian colleagues need. So we'll keep that going. One practical thing that we're doing is in the UK, we've got a £10 million Innovate Ukraine Challenge Fund, which supports pilot projects for low carbon business models, energy storage, renewable heating, smart green grids. We've got that as part of a package of support, and I know many other countries are putting in similar funds. But all of this supports the work that Ukraine's doing on reforms, and that's essential for unlocking future investment. And the progress in that, in the midst of Russian aggression, is also incredibly impressive. Whether it's liberalising wholesale energy tariffs, corporatizing state-owned enterprises, for us, we see that as absolutely key. And the fact that you can keep doing that, keep this long-term agenda going, is amazing. So thank you and well done. We think it's particularly important because of the huge opportunity Ukraine has to be an energy hub for the region, like Jeff said, as it has been before, as it still is. And as Ukrainian colleagues set out so clearly at the London Recovery Conference in June, huge gas storage, CO2 potential, CO2 storage potential, the fact that DTEC opened a new wind farm in the middle of the conflict this year, exporting electricity to Europe, and then these huge critical mineral resources, which we're all invested in exploiting so that we can get on with the energy transition globally. I mean, there's huge potential there. So it's really important we align G7, G7 plus and beyond behind Ukraine's energy reform and energy sector. And the NECP helps us do that. So we're absolutely committed to it. We want to use the G7 plus group and the clean energy plan to get behind this as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you. Thank you for combining this vision on G7 plus and energy. How do you see passing the baton to your German counterparts for next year conference? Would energy be again a critical piece of this, as was in London?
Well, I can't speak for my German colleagues, but they've been really supportive of the whole agenda. I think we all agree that this has to be key to any Ukraine recovery conference. It's the central pillar. There's no getting around that. And so the work that we've done, that Germany's been a key part of in developing the clean energy plan and in the G7 plus group, we think they're going to take forward. That's all looking really positive, and we stand here ready to help and support.
Thank you very much, Tim. So let me turn right now to Director Artur Lorkowski. And Artur is leading the most important right now EU institution facing the energy reforms and energy agenda in Ukraine. And you have been relentless in your support to Ukraine. You have been also providing advice on and guidance on reforms. How do you see the role of energy community in the coming months, and especially in this progress from London to German recovery conference?
Thank you very much, Michał, for inviting me, and for this opportunity to be here, and thank you for appreciating the role of the Secretariat, which is the role. We are as much strong as our partners are, so we are not doing anything which is not supported by G7 plus, and the role of the G7 plus platform for coordinating the support being provided to Ukraine is hardly to be overestimated. And when it comes to the coordination of the instant needs for the swift and the recovery, or when it comes to the more broader reform agenda, I mean, the same rule applies. And our discussions we are having on the gas pistons, on the auto transformers or gabions are, very much, incentivizing us to work further on having a coordinated support to Ukraine, and, channeling properly the support which is given through the Secretariat by different donors for the quick recovery. Having said that, I would like also emphasize this midterm perspective, and we have very much cooperated with the UK government on the content of the energy conference, recovery conference in London, and I think UK government managed successfully to convey key messages. The key messages on the rebuilding itself, the key messages being rebuilding better, which is something which is becoming obvious. This is on the participation in this process of the private sector, and how to create the business case for the private sector to invest in the rebuilding process in the future. And I mean, we have been discussing the NECP. I mean, the NECP, the National Energy Climate Plan, the plan which is being prepared by Oleksiy and the team and the Minister of Economy right now, is exactly to answer these questions, because the NECP is answering the question, or is expected rather to answer the question, what does it mean better in this sentence about the rebuilding better? So, because that would be a set of reforms, would be a set of projects, set of policy actions to be taken in Ukraine. Ukraine will commit to, which I believe will be clarifying not only what is the vision of Ukraine, the vision which has been already delivered for the energy sector by the 2050 energy strategy, but also to provide a clarity on the actions, policy actions, reforms. That what is the needed so much for investors to understand what is to be expected in a year, in 5 years, 10 years from now. So the NECP will be answering the question, what does it mean better? And I'm very glad that through the high-level group which has been established with Michał, your involvement, and also with the ministry, the process has been set up also to involve all of the G7 partners, G7 plus partners, and the international organizations in the process of consulting the NECP. The process which I think is critically important because it would allow to increase the understanding of this vision, but also at some point to coordinate the financial support to provide the means for implementation, the means for the proper realization of this plan once the plan will be ready. And this coordinated approach is already being understood very well by the European Commission, making this Ukraine facility dependent to some extent to the priorities of the NECP. And I have just heard that the US government will be following the same approach, asking for a decentralized system, greener system for energy, but the system will be described very precisely in the NECP. This is also important for not only for the donor coordination at some point when we will come to the point when the NECP will start being implemented, but also it is important for business and for the private investors to understand the future policy and legal and regulatory regime in Ukraine to take place. And this is extremely important, this clarity to be provided. And I think that G7 could also play a quite important role in reaching out to this business community, in explaining through the high-level group on the key assumptions and the policy measures to be taken. But this process is not something we can expect in the future. I mean, the process of Ukraine reforming its legislation, approximation of the legislation, harmonization of the legislation with the European system is happening right now. And this is a very smart choice for Ukraine, because if Ukraine wants to be a hub for Europe, if Ukraine wants to provide Europe with energy resources, it is important that the rules which are expected to be established in Ukraine will be fully aligned with the European system, so that we can have one pan-European market for energy, including European Union. And that is that is something which is happening right now. We have just summarized the process of reforms on the electricity market, which followed the decision on energy synchronization in March 2022. You remember this very brave and bold, I would say, from today's perspective, decision of the EU transmission system operators to synchronize in the emergency mode the Ukrainian grid with the European. But this process has been conditioned by a set of the reforms to be introduced in Ukraine. And we just before the COP, we have together with the European Commission took some assessment of the process where we are. And I have to admit that I'm really impressed by the pace and the scope of the reforms on the electricity market that have been introduced since March 2022 in Ukraine. And let's give me one example. The fact that now all of the borders of the European Union and Ukraine are equipped with the proper regulatory framework, which is enabling the trade in electricity between both countries within the limits we have, which are of the technical, when it comes to the regulatory framework for trading electricity with Poland, with Romania, soon with Hungary and Slovakia. is something which is of the utmost importance, because this is exactly creating this space for Ukrainian companies and the future investors that might come to Ukraine to see the perspective of exporting the energy products to the European Union and to harvest the better prices on the Ukrainian on the European market. It would require more and more efforts, for sure. We will have to discuss the renaissance, or how to lead to the renaissance of the renewable sector in Ukraine. This is something which is ahead of us. We know that this is we know all the problems which we encountered before the war. All of the debts which have been collected, they haven't disappeared because of the war. In contrary, they are more. The issue is much more complicated, but we are ready to engage in that discussion. We know what assets might be offered to the European Union by the gas sector, and we also started with the ministry thinking how the gas storage capacities of Ukraine could be offered to the European traders this winter, and partially we succeeded in that. More than 3 BCM of gas have been stored by the European traders voluntarily and on the commercial basis in the Ukrainian storage facility. This is something which we haven't expected from the traders which are operating, and they are acknowledging and they are understanding that the country at the war conditions. So this is extremely important to understand it. And there are many other reform projects which are still ahead of us. But what makes me incentivized to work on that is the expected decision of the European Union to open actually the negotiation with Ukraine, the EU accession negotiations, and this decision is expected to take place on 15 December, so in a week or from now. So that would be another layer of the energy cooperation with Ukraine. Energy Community Secretary will be providing our job, but also the job will be also enhancing the process of negotiations. And I believe that the negotiation process will be concluded as soon as possible. But we don't have to wait for that to be fully integrated. And the electricity market is the best example. The offer has been already made by the European Union to open the electricity market of the European Union for Ukraine and the other contracting parties of the energy community, including Moldova. I saw already Minister somewhere here, so I have to mention Moldova in this regard. So this market coupling is something which is an offer made now, and this is on the table. This is only dependent on Ukraine, when Ukraine will be ready to take up this opportunity and to further increase the cross-border trading capacities. And this is only dependent on the parliament of Ukraine, how fast you will be able to adopt the legislation which is needed, how fast and how quick you will be able to set up the proper market infrastructure or market institutional framework, including the nomination of NEMO, etc. I don't want to bother you with all of the technical issues, but the offer is there. So you don't need to wait for the enlargement of the European Union. The offer is there, and it's up to you to take the advantage of that. But this is something how we can bridge towards this period towards the full membership in the European Union. And I think that there are some elements and some process the energy community could be supportive in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director. Thank you for this large expose of this extremely important right now role of the energy community as the bridge. And you said that even before the accession, there is so much to do, and this bridge can be already functional in both directions. This is happening right now. Yes, the energy integration through energy community, and it is happening. It's happening. You mentioned, Director, private funding, and I'm a little of a public investor. It's the biggest public investment bank in the world, and still it has a role to promote private investment. So how do you see your role as EIB in the process which has been described by Director Lorkowski and in the framework of G7 plus work? Lionel.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting the EIB to this panel discussion. Very pleased to see again many Ukrainian colleagues and international partners. And let me start by saying how impressed I am by the great resilience, determination of the government, of the society as a whole in Ukraine to really cope with this extreme situation, but at the same time to move ahead on these strategic plans and reforms. And this is truly, truly remarkable. From EIB perspective, I mean, let me start by where we are coming from. I mean, our cooperation with Ukraine is a long-standing one, but it clearly accelerated 2014 with the association agreement. And we built over the past year 7 billion euros of investment in the country, and to a large extent already to support the integration with the Union. So the investments which are made in the past years in integration of energy networks, transport networks, value chains proved to be extremely valuable in the current context. And the reforms also started through the association process. Now, 24th of February happened. And here what we have been doing was really to basically meet the immediate needs of Ukraine. So our priority was to provide the liquidity where it was needed, to provide the financing support for recovery, reconstructions for the critical assets. And to be honest, this is what we have been doing over the past 18 months to a large extent. So we mobilized last year 1.7 billion euro. This year, 500 million is being deployed. And obviously, this is expected to go and to be scaled up going further. And here I would say, yes, lots of support for, let's say, public investment in the reconstruction of bridges, in the reconstruction of critical infrastructure. On the energy side, liquidity provided to, for instance, the transmission system operator, 50 million, but also supporting the resilience of this operator. So, for instance, now we are discussing with Ukrenergo, the TSO, for protection of substation, of assets, of... In the previous panel, our colleagues from Hydroenergo asked a question about support to the hydropower sector. Here we are mobilizing this year 130 million to repair damaged hydropower assets. So I think our response has really been to address the resilience of the systems in view of these terrible attacks. But now and going forward, obviously, our role is to repair with this long-term vision. And clearly for us as the EU bank, the integration is EU. So for this, the work done on the National Energy and Climate Plan is absolutely commendable and critical for us to enable the support to this process. So it's very interesting to see that already now, preparation of project, financing of project, targets, measures, which go both in the direction of reconstruction, but at the same time supporting the transition. So when we support, for instance, municipalities to rebuild schools or hospitals, the discussion we have with them is not just to fix with small, quick repairs. This is about making the building energy efficient. This afternoon, in a couple of hours, in this pavilion, we will announce a new program for decentralized renewable energy support with the German government and Ukraine. So in a way, we are turning to this process of supporting the transition. And clearly from an EIB perspective, well, this is what will drive all our support. We have supported the integration of 22 member states. We know that the EU accession is a driver for growth for Ukraine. We know that the harmonization is a blueprint for the modernization. And we just need to look at history and Central European countries, the driving force that this accession process has been. So we look very much forward to supporting this. And of course, it will be done both with the public sector, and it's clear that during the early years, lots of concessional support will be required, but at the same time, and where possible, trying to support the private sector. So we are rolling out now new instruments to enable to share risk with private partners, notably with banks, to enable more private investment. And it's clear that part of this energy transition will rely on mobilization of the private sector.
Thank you very, very much. Maybe just by curiosity, you are in the process of choosing a new leadership. I know it's not easy for somebody from inside to comment on it, but if you were to dream a little bit, a new mandate for EIB, taking into account the challenges linked with Ukraine's recovery, what would be the new mandate?
Yes, I will. I need to practice a bit other languages. For sure. What I would say is that it's very interesting to see the discussion happening now at the EU level on the Ukraine facility in the context of the midterm review of the MFF's multi-annual financial framework. And I would say there is one element which is not so much contested. This is the support to Ukraine. And as the EU bank, it's clear, because we will have our support aligned with the Ukraine plan, aligned with the Ukraine facility, I can only imagine that we will play a key role in this context, whoever becomes the leader of our institution.
Thank you very much. It was not in Spanish, as Harry suggested, so it was. Thank you very much for this answer. So Harry, let me turn to you. We are talking a lot about energy, but we are in the middle of climate conference, and you are heading climate and energy in the EBRD. So how do you see marrying both for Ukraine?
Oh, thank you very much, Mikhail. Maybe just if I take 2 minutes to restate the strength of EBRD's commitment to Ukraine, that we committed to support Ukraine over 2022 and 2023 with €3 billion financing, which we have delivered with the very generous support of the US, the UK, and other key shareholders and partners. Perhaps even more importantly and more powerfully, in this year, our Board of Governors approved a capital increase of €4 billion. Again, very generous support of our shareholders, including the US, the UK, and the EIB. And that is a really powerful statement. The capital increases are very hard for development banks to get, very hard for shareholders to commit to. And the fact that we secured this, and it's very explicitly a capital increase intended to allow us to continue to support Ukraine at that level for as long as the war persists, and then to really step up and do much more in a reconstruction scenario. So I want to reiterate both the strength of what we've been able to do in the first period, and then how strong our shareholder commitment and by extension the bank's commitment is to Ukraine. Reconciling climate and energy for Ukraine. Well, I think the lesson of the Ukraine crisis, the lesson of the energy crisis that came after the invasion and the war, is that we don't have attention anymore. That, you know, when I started doing renewable energy, it was expensive, it was a luxury item, you had to explain to people that yes, it was worth compromising a bit on price, perhaps a little bit on stability and security, because you had to start engaging. That's gone now. And what we know is that if you want to line up affordability, security of supply, diversifying your energy sector, greening your energy sector, the answer always comes back to wind and sun and hydro and biomass and geothermal. And that is a very, very powerful message that we've all observed over the last couple of years. And especially in this crisis across Europe, no one has been complaining about having too many wind turbines or too many solar panels. And I think, you know, one of the untold successes of the Ukrainian energy sector was the boom in renewables before the war. Now, a lot of people, I was the director of the energy team at the time involved in that, and I know the stories, and you know, we were part of those stories. It was not an easy saga. It was not an easy time. There were a lot of flaws in the system, and there were a lot of problems, and there were a lot of things that need to be fixed still. But the outcome was that Ukraine built 5 gigawatts of clean renewable generating capacity with private money, and that's a very impressive achievement. So I think the message for the NECP, the message for the reconstruction phase, the message for building back better, the message for Ukraine's future is it will have a European energy system, and a European energy system perfectly reconciles climate and energy needs, and it does so by building it absolutely on a foundation of clean, green, renewable electricity.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you. So let me right now open the floor for 1 or 2 questions, if there is from the floor. Interventions. Yes, please, go on.
Dichuk, Institute for Economics and Forecasting. We are responsible for modeling for NFCP, but I have a question for you. From one side, we are speaking about new technologies, green steel, hydrogen, etc., about leapfrog, and so on. From other side, in regulation, how to prepare NCP in additional measures, in the future measures, indicated that these measures should be realistic. So your suggestion, what we should include in our policy, in our scenarios, it's we should be with ambitions regarding the green export technology, green export technologies, green export industry, or maybe it will be less ambition, just only about our security, resilience, and so on. Thank you very much. What's your
the honest answer is I don't know. And I don't think anybody knows, because what you're talking about is the evolution of entirely new industries. There isn't a green hydrogen industry of any significance globally. There isn't a green ammonia. There isn't a green fertilizer. There isn't green steel. So with absolute certainty, this is how it's going to work. This is what you should do. Is a very good chance of being wrong. And they certainly, if they're certain, they're definitely wrong to be certain. So what's the answer is you build as much flexibility and resilience in your system. I mean, this is the lesson. I mean, most of all, you're experiencing it right now, the resilience of your system in the face of an awful physical attack. But, more generally, we all observe in the last, frankly, since COVID, resilience is a very valuable property in a system. So that relates to the diversity of energy mix, it relates to the construction of networks. But I think the right answer to say is that you need to build a system that can accommodate both scenarios. There is a scenario where Ukraine is a huge powerhouse exporting green steel to the rest of Europe. There's also a scenario where it doesn't work like that. And you need to build a system and have a policy that can accommodate both of those options.
If I may on that, so I would rather not expect the answer to be given to you from outside. So this is something you have to figure out independently. Why? Because if you would go outside of this pavilion, you will just meet the people, negotiating for the last 20 years, the mitigation objectives or targets under the UNFCCC. And unfortunately, they have still the comfort of negotiating, and they have the comfort of prolonging the negotiations as long as it would be needed. You don't have, because you have already lost 50% of your capacity. So you don't have, comfort of waiting for the outcome of these negotiations. You have to take up the reality as it is and to figure out how to rebuild it. And this is something which is very unique. The experience of losing 50% of the capacity, and now sitting down and thinking how to bridge this gap. And you cannot expect anyone to give you this answer, because we haven't experienced, and think tankers in Europe are not ready to answer this question. This is my deep conviction. More or less, I believe that Ukraine at some point will become the laboratory of change, laboratory of the transition. And all of the countries we are, representing, or the institution representing here, they will take the lesson from you at some point, how to make the transition, in Europe and the world and globally. And, your examples, your failures, your success stories will be inspiring, outside of Ukraine. This is how I see the process.
And then G7 plus and energy community will play the role of sharing your experience with G7 plus countries and European Union and reshaping Green Deal and our commitments to climate. Thank you very much for this excellent panel. Let me thank our brilliant panelists for bringing their perspective in really an extremely interesting complementary view of the future of Ukraine energy system. Thank you. It was really great. Maybe do we have photos to Olena to be done? Yes, you asked me to make a photo of panelists. So let's and maybe we ask our next panelists, Svetlana, Natalia, to join with us. Yes, okay.
So maybe the gender equality. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And they know about that stuff. Okay, we have to start.
Dear colleagues, let's move on for the next panel. So let's have, thank you very much. Thank you. Let's have Natalia, Oleksiy, and Svetlana. Let's move forward. Dear friends, dear colleagues, let's move. And all the difficult questions that we always wanted to ask regarding National Energy and Climate Plan and regarding energy future, that is the moment, because we have here creme de la creme of Ukrainian government with obviously Svetlana and Oleksiy, but also Natalia. Thank you very much for joining this panel, and who is online with us. Very sorry. We do not have Anna, but we have Maria. Maria with us. Hello, Maria. Thank you very much. We have the inscription of Anna, so I apologize. We will have to correct ourselves. So maybe we start with a few words, and maybe ladies first. Svetlana, you start, yes?
Thank you, Michal. Thank you very much. It was a big pleasure to see you here and to feel your support to Ukraine. How a lot of things you do you are doing for Ukraine, and you're managing this process with developments. They are very special and important document for Ukraine. National Energy and Climate Plan, and we started this process a few years ago, and now I hope we will finalize this process, and we will have really
And the European integration of
yes, and the European integration, and we will have really realistic and ambitious roadmap how we need to change our economy, especially energy and climate policy, for achieving the climate neutrality till 2050. We have goal, but we need to do a lot till 2035 for achieving the climate neutrality. And during these few days in the COP, we discussed a lot with our European partners about our achievement from the war, when the war started, and they told me that energy could be like a driver for whole European integration of Ukraine, because we demonstrated a lot of progresses during these 1.5 years. With your support, with support of our partners. And today we discussed in the previous panels that the continue of this integration, synchronization of markets between Ukraine and Europe is very important, and we are doing this. We did a lot, but we have a lot of plans together with energy community, with the European Commission, with DG Energy, how to continue this synchronization process. We developed for this moment the draft laws for market coupling implementation, and I hope we will adopt together, we will work together with member of parliaments, and we will adopt this legislation in the early beginning of next year, because we understand that it's very important to have this legislation for Ukraine and for European Union at the same. And I will be happy to answer after our introductions, to answer all the questions. And thank you very much. I want to thank also the modeling team and Dixie Group for their amazing work, because we are really professional, and you did a lot for this meeting today and for this result today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Maybe Natalia, if you would be so kind to take the floor, and what is it inspiring you these discussions, and how we can move forward in order to not only make papers and good plans, which is already an extremely important step, taking into account the war, the chaos, all the difficulties, but how to move forward in order for Ukraine that this energy plan is also a factor of civilizational progress in many aspects.
Thank you. Actually, I'm very happy that we have exactly this discussion, because couple of years ago, when we started the first discussion about that plan, Svetlana was on the side of ecology, I was on the side of energy, and that was still a friendship. You know, in Ukraine, this is the key moment that we have different tasks. Sometimes we have also the different realities, but the idea is very unique and very important. We all are fans of the full Euro integration with the high standards of regulation, technical decisions, key points, and key priorities. So actually, we spent a very long time, and finally, we are on a very understandable final step with the clear vision and clear draft. last period in the history of Ukraine and also in the history of energy is very dramatical, of course, and it's for sure the game changer. And we trying to do our best to use the challenge as a very important opportunity. And in one hand, we are spending a very complicated days because we are physically cutting our future and future development using money, human source, all forces to cover damages. But at the other hand, this is a real fight for the future because we're trying in one hand to cover damages, but at the other hand, to find investments, to find friends, to find partners, to keep solutions for the future development on the current agenda. So I have probably two important feedbacks about the impact of the current game changer, the war, to our minds and to our future. The first is not very logical in one hand, but very important for Ukrainian future. We understood that we are ready to do both, to cover damages and to build the future at the same time. It's challenging, it's complicated, but it's life importance. So now, in one hand, we are fighting for our today, but at the other hand, we are looking for financing partners, international investments, because without growing economy, without growing energy sector, we have no future at all. So that's why you saw in Oleksi's presentation, for example, last couple of slides with key projects that are like in a brilliant signature projects to develop the energy system of Ukraine and also to push economy to grow. Also, we have a very frank and complicated discussions with our IFIs partners. Lionel was in a very complicated situation because in one hand, they'd like to support us. At the other hand, their risk management and of course, the financial risk department probably are not the best fans of what we are doing and what we are talking about, because we'd like to fight for middle term and long-term projects, both. Me as an advisor to Prime Minister, working mainly with state-owned companies trying to attract financing. So we have a very frank and complicated dialogue with European Investment Bank. At the other hand, we have now a very important moment with EBRD, because we are moving on a new stage. Last year, we spent with project covering financial needs and liquidity, but we are moving forward and now we have a new model and we're trying to interact financing on a state-owned company, Ukhrhydroenergo, to mix both EBRD financing and Italian state financing to the one credit line to create a very different financial instrument with a lower percent. So we spent a very trustable year with a very important project development processes, and now we are growing to the next level, and we are very happy about that. So this year, I hope in 2 weeks, we are signing a credit line for Ukrenergo with EBRD. With the World Bank, we are working on the liquidity through peace instrument and different types of instruments. So we're growing our own capacity of the companies, but also the capacity of the banks. They are working to much quicker, less bureaucracy, and they're trying to support us in this very crucial period. So my very first frank feedback is fight for our today, but also help us to fight about our future projects and our development. The second very frank feedback is that in this very sensitive, very dark period of Ukrainian history, somehow the situation in energy has not just the very tragedy impact on the lives of Ukrainians, because they not always have the coverage of their energy need, but at the same time, we start to build a very frank dialogue with consumers. Finally, we start to build dialogue about the smart consumption, about the peak hours, about the planning of your consumption. So almost each Ukrainians know now that the energy system of Ukrainian has less capacity because they feel that. But we start the dialogue about consumption. So how you have right or capacity to support the energy system, planning your consumption through the different hours. How you as a general Ukrainian can be important for the each energy person at the system fighting for your access to energy. And for me, this is a very dramatic moment because Ukraine jumped from the period when tariffs need to be low to the moment when each Ukrainian can feel responsibility as a consumer. And in my understanding, that's very European way of development of my thinking. And I hope that we are moving to the market with the right to choose your supplier, with the right to choose the type of your supplier. I'd like to be green. I'd like to be cheaper and not green. I'd like to be different. So for me, these two important moments are probably the most important for the whole that very sensitive period of the energy system. And we have today a very nice sunny day here, probably a bit too hot, but in Ukraine, we are waiting day by day for new dramatical attacks from Russia Federation to Ukrainian energy system. And each Ukrainian has power banks, some different type of energy supply, generators, etc. So that's why we have no choice. We need to develop our country and we need to fight for our future. And thank you very much for each partner and each person who has Ukraine in the top agenda, who keep focus on us and who is very much supportive to interact international investments, low financing, but also European future for Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you for so brilliantly exposing us how you turn this night moment, this very complicated, you said, moment of your history into an opportunity also to see that there is light in the tunnel and that you can combine covering the damages with building a better future. And that is the whole exercise of National Energy and Climate Plan, I think, which is driven by Oleksiy, by Svetlana, and by other ministries and by the teams. So that is really what is a National Energy and Climate Plan about, and it's very much at the heart of Ukraine dream about a better future and about a European future, common European future. So let me turn right now to Maria. Maria is deputy head of SAFE. Thank you very much for being with us. And we discussed a lot about energy efficiency since the beginning, saying that it's one of the most important challenge ahead of Ukraine and especially of its energy, industry and buildings systems. So how do you see it and what is your perspective on this National Energy and Climate Plan, Maria?
Thank you and welcome everyone. And today I am presenting a state agency on energy efficiency and energy saving. And we are responsible for implementing policy on energy efficiency. And you know, energy efficiency is the issue which unites energy issue and climate issue. And in our work, we rely on integrated approach, European integrated approach of energy and climate policy. And today we already has very ambitious goals for Ukraine in energy efficiency. According to our energy efficiency national action plan till 2030, which sets a national energy efficiency target. And it is to reduce primary energy consumption on 22% and final energy consumption by 17%. And today we are currently preparing a 3-year action plan for its implementation in 2024 till 2026. And we rely on a new mechanism. I mean, you may know that our parliament this year approved a new legislation about creation, decarbonization and energy efficient transformation fund based on the European principle polluter pays. And now we developing financial mechanism to stimulate our households and industry to increase energy efficiency. And we hope that Ukrainian recovery will be based on EU principle, energy efficiency is the first. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And last but not least, with your comments, I would like Oleksiy to end up this introductory tour, and we will have some time for questions and interactions with all of us.
Well, I presented whatever I could on NACP, so the current state, and we are very welcome all the support that we're getting from all the ministries that are engaged, from you, Michal, and G7 members who are engaged in providing experts and comments, because this is a way forward, and as we say, this is a big part of how we see, like, not Ukraine recovery, but Ukraine, rather EU integration as becoming more, getting GDP per capita more towards European levels. So this is a very powerful aspect to that. And we thank UK for supporting this work, and Dixie and other experts for helping us. But from what I've heard today is that everybody is like, doing reforms during the wartime, right? And then doing the war at the same time, it is difficult. It is. And everybody is acknowledging that. But somehow what I feel by preparing both the NCP and Ukraine plan is that the pressure is even bigger. So, like, we all want to become a EU member the soonest, which means like doing a hell lot of more reforms that we had, and it's not getting easier, and kind of the war situation is not getting easier. So and it is hard to balance these two things, and then being more ambitious and like reflecting on this need that we have, and also like balancing this. And there's just so many people in the government and this civil society and on the front lines, but what could be probably what we hope to achieve with NACP and Ukraine plan is this general framework of how we're moving forward, and to send the signals to everybody that I don't think that, like, at the start of the year there was this feeling that we should plan for after the war. I guess by the end of the year everybody's moving towards kind of why wait. So, like, we should be doing something now, and that's exactly what Ukraine is doing, right? So we're doing reforms and the war. So I guess Andrew was referring to that, right? So, like, once the war is over, there will be a fund, and I think it will change. I think, like, it's in the process of changing. So, like, people will not wait, and we will have this transition, but with plans like NACP and our joint work, it is important to send this kind of like long-term signals. So kind of everybody understands now, yes, we're a member of EU. What does it mean exactly? And of course, like from the finance standpoint and from the integration standpoint, there will be a plan, this plan, that, and it will be executed. And we all, both Ukraine from its side and EU and G7 will contribute for it to happen. So I guess like with signals like this, it will create this dynamic, so people will stop waiting, and it will make everything more easier, and the plans will become more realistic because they will be executed better. And so that's my reflection on today's discussion. Thank you for this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Why wait? Yes, let's move forward with what we can right now already. And so the floor is yours right now for a couple of comments or questions on the side of the participants in this panel. We discussed already a lot. Yes, indeed. Yes, go on.
Thank you so much for such interesting discussion. You have already mentioned a lot about the diversification of energetic supply and about the impact of Russian aggression, especially shellings, and like basically destroying the energetic system of Ukraine. I'm also like the representative of youth. I'm, I would say, hugely impacted and influenced by this shellings because the university, like living without electricity blackouts, it's influencing like every day my basic life routine. Talking about the changing, like from the news, we can see that like lots of money, like huge waves of financial support were given to strengthen, make it more capable to like more resilient from the shellings and bombarding like Russia. And it also was somehow disputed about the like strategy of the national security, strategy of energetic security of Ukraine. So which steps were like carried out till now to strengthen the energetic system, to make it more resilient, not from the perspective of the climate change perhaps, but from making it more capable to stay alive, I would say so, from the bombarding and shellings from Russia?
I should start and continue. Thank you very much for this question. It's true that during this period from the Russian invasion in Ukraine, we lost more than 50% of our generation capacity. It's really a lot. I don't know another example in the world. But this year we did the unprecedented repair campaign together with our energy companies, and now we are ready for covering the electricity demand, but we are expecting, like as Natalia mentioned, the new attacks from Russia, and we don't understand what level of this attack we will have. We try to construct the passive protection for our energy equipment, auto transformer, during this last few months, but the best protection for the energy sector, for the energy equipment, that's true, it's air defense system. And with our partners' support, yes, our air defense system is much stronger this year, but it's not enough. And another way to achieve the resilient energy system, and I think it's the best solution, is to be fully synchronized with European energy system, because it's give not just for us, but for our European partners, more security, more resilience. And I think we will do this. We did a lot, but we continue doing this. Maybe Natalia.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So we have a public track and secure track. The public track, as Svetlana mentioned very correctly, so we are trying to protect the objects of national system operator, substation, transformators, lines, but it's pretty quick how to repair to us 9 months, and now it's much different how it's happening. It's like in a huge cup of tones thing with a not standard form that you can manage easily. Then the generation capacities we are repairing, but also the idea is to diversify the generation capacities and to create small generation capacities at each region, and to support the municipalities also to transform in a way of cogeneration their capacities, also focus on the heat, because in Ukraine it's the winter is much different, so heating is also an important key need of the population. One more important, not popular on the COP track that Ukrainian is still doing is upstream. So we're trying to hold the gas upstream on the current level, and even to develop more. And for us, it's very important because the consumption of gas for current winter and the next season will be huge in Ukraine. So the idea is to cover with our own gas our needs, to be independent even from import of the gas from Europe. Svetlana mentioned very correctly the import-export solution for both electricity and gas, the flexibility of the system, both systems. And of course, the management changed a lot. So our key dispatcher is the brilliant person making a creative solution, and they are doing an amazing job. So we know how incredible are our people in each energy company. They're working under attacks. They're working 24/7 and even more. So they're working in the most dark periods, and I think they are now the best crisis managers general in the world in a very strange situation. They don't have a plan, but in a couple of minutes they have solution. And that's the most important thing. So people, and we're trying to keep them, to support them, and to develop them. So equipment, diversification of sources, upstream connection with Europe, and people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we exhausted the questions and the comments. I think that it's, as Natalia rightly said, it's time for action. That was an excellent event. That was excellently prepared, and that was the fruit. That's this, how you call it, the iceberg only, because that's the work of a lot of people in order to prepare national energy and climate plan, in order to move forward the coordination in these difficult times of war between ministries, in order to make this national energy and climate plan also an asset in terms of public consultations. That would be the first national energy and climate plan consulted during a war, live with NGOs, and shared so widely, started with this COP event. So again, congratulations for our guests here at the panel. Congratulations for organizers of the panel, to Olena, to all the Dixie team. Thank you very much. You deserve an enormous credit, and obviously our both institutions, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Energy, Ministry of Environment. Sorry, there are many more. And I've learned right now, Office of the Prime Minister, obviously SAFE. All these agencies are crucial in order to make sure that the plan is implementable, and that it's representing all the views inside the administration, inside the government, because that is the objective of National Energy and Climate Plan. Again, thank you very much. Congratulations. And I hope to see you with the delivery.
And thank you, Michal, for great moderating this event. Thank you.